And well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today. My name's Francesca Bizon, and I'm the UK Marketing Manager with the Airbus Protect, and I'll be helping to moderate this session. If you're not familiar with the brand, Airbus Protect is a subsidiary of Airbus. We specialise in safety, cybersecurity, and sustainability risk management delivered through high-value consultancy services and digital solutions. We're joined today by three of our CTI experts. Stefan Heckler is our line manager from the Threat Management Centre in Germany, and Emma Mullins and Callum Williams-Kinnaird, who are cyber defence specialists based in the UK. Before we start, I'd like to run through a little bit of housekeeping. The session is being recorded and we'll share the slides with all attendees after the webinar. If you'd like to make use of the Q&A section, if you look at the bottom right-hand corner, you should see three dots in the WebEx platform. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please pop them in there, and then during the open Q&A at the end of the webinar, we'll address them directly with the consultants themselves. Also, during the Q&A, please raise your hand and we'll unmute you and you can ask your questions directly if you have them. Okay, so without any further ado, I'd like to hand over to Stefan to present.
All right, thank you, Francesca, for the handover, and thank you everyone for joining our webinar today. I would like to start with a quickly overgoing of the company and the locations before we go to the interesting topics of our intelligence service later on with Emma and Callum. So Airbus Protect is a team of over 1,700 dedicated experts. Our turnover in 2024 was about 238 million euros, and we are providing 300 clients across the diverse and critical sectors like aerospace, energy, transport, and amongst others. Today, we are speaking around the transnational threat management team, which is a part of the Managed Security Services business unit. We are operating in Airbus Protect's core country, so we are a transnational team, which you see mapped on the right part of the slide in the map, where we have those blue dots, which is where our sites are, and you see those kind of pinkish circled dots. That is where our security operations centers are located. So you see that we have some people sitting around Munich, Paris, Toulouse, Newport, and Madrid. So if we hand over to our slide 2, where we go a little bit into our managed security services capabilities, this slide demonstrates how our services cover the entire threat life cycle, so end to end, ensuring the protection of our clients from anticipation to the resolution. So we help you to identify, protect, detect, and react on threats. So to help to anticipate threats, we have our vulnerability management service, where we examine your infrastructure, the weaknesses around there, which also incorporates with our digital risk protection, where we are managing your exposed risks, so exposed services, exposed data of the dark web, etc. Next, we are basically handling your ATAC service, and then we are coming to the SOC, where we have a 24/7 provisioning to detect continuously the threats in your network and at your endpoints. We offer this through a full managed detection and response service, where we also conduct threat hunts in your environment, which are leveraged by our intelligence service, where we will have today the look at. So this is where we will deep dive later on. And finally, we also have our incident response and the digital forensics to react to large-scale incidents which might happen in environments, which can be called through a 24/7 hotline for an immediate incident response action, but is also offered in a retainer service, where we can more talk towards a potential incident response case upfront, so that we know what's needed to be done in your environment in case of an happening. So this shows you, this slide shows you the comprehensive services we are providing, but let's go into the next slide, where we are talking a little bit about the interoperability and how we do it basically different in our environment for the strengths on how we are providing our services. So our real strength is not just an individual service to offer to our clients. It's really the interoperability of the teams that provide those services. We call this internally our force multiplier. We are for that stronger than our summary of our parts. So what that means is basically our expert teams of the Security Operations Center, so the SOC, the incident response, as well as the threat management, do not work in silos. So we do work as a team. So we have a synergy created between our platforms so that we have basically one platform, one process, and this is delivered by all of the exports of all of those 3 centers. This results in a seamless, unified defense rather than a separated, separate service which acts on its own and doesn't know what the other do. To show a little bit how that workflow works, we have on the next slide the idea around this one team promise. So this is basically our collaboration model. It's the how-to of our interoperability. So our 3 expert centers, the SOC, the Threat Management Center, and the Incident Response Center, they are constantly connected. They exchange the informations from the SOC and the Incident Response and the Threat Management Center with each other. And together they are creating a team which is called the Indigo team. The Indigo team is a functional team which consists of all of those 3 centers that are working together to hunt in the client's environment, which enables us to get information from all of our SOCs, which you saw is distributed in different areas in Europe, where we collect the threat informations on what's going on, what's happening, and that's the threat exchange you see transferred from, example, the SOC, the Threat Management Center, but also from Incident Response to the Threat Management Center. So they are also providing the incident threat informations to the to the threat management, where we can enrich around those informations and push them back to our client base through the collected informations, and ensure that all of our analysts are aware and have actionable informations to hunt against in our SOX environments. With that said, we will go a little bit into the mission of our cyber threat intelligence, and for that, I would like to hand over to Callum to present a little bit around our philosophy, which we have in our intelligence service.
Yeah, thanks, Stefan. So hi, everyone. I'm going to walk you through our cyber threat intelligence mission, not just as a theory, but as our practical day-to-day operation. So Stefan just presented to you our integrated teams, and I want to explain the philosophy that guides our intelligence service. We don't just disseminate IOCs, we operate as a true intelligence team. To do that, we've adapted the thinking of this man, Sherman Kent. Kent is also known as the father of intelligence analysis. He was a Yale professor who was brought in to build the CIA's methods for professional analysis back in the Cold War. His core mission then is our core mission now, to move intelligence beyond just being a history report. Kent saw a huge difference between current intelligence, which is reporting on what has already happened, and estimative intelligence, which is analyzing information to predict what will likely happen next. And that's the core of our philosophy. Most security intelligence is just current intelligence, a log of blocked IPs or a history report of what's been patched. That's useful to generate past insights, but it's simply not enough. Our focus on being an estimative service, we are focused on what's next and what that means for our business. Kent's main idea was that the analyst's job is to provide information for decision makers and action takers, and that's exactly how we see our role. We provide that critical forward-looking context to inform the right strategic call while delivering actionable insights to our own technical teams in order for them to create effective response actions. This philosophy of Kent's doctrine, for us, it's our operational standard. Next slide, please. So this doctrine, or this approach, is built on 9 principles you see on the slide. I'm not going to talk through all of them, as that would take a bit long. Instead, I just want to highlight a few that are really important to us on how our team works. The first one being focus on concerns. This just means we start with your problems and your questions. We don't just send you a feed of random data. Then the next few points, like no policy agenda and avoid analytic bias, are all about objectivity. In simple terms, this just means we're trying to tell the truth, not just as what convenient. We don't jump to the earliest conclusion, we do the hard work to find the right one. Next, I want to point out clear communication. This is huge for us. It means be right in plain English, and that links directly to point 8, acknowledgement of uncertainty. This is our hallucination rule. We always tell you what we know, and just as importantly, what we don't know. This gives you a true, honest picture of the situation. And finally, continuous improvement. This just means we have a feedback loop to keep on growing better. So these principles are the professional standards our analysts follow, and it's essentially how we build trust in our analysis. Next slide, please. So where do we apply this critical, careful analytical approach? To answer that, we first have to define what is an adversary. This chart breaks down the external adversary threat. On the left-hand side, you can see technological threats, like a server failing, or environmental threats, like a power outage. But as you can see, these are typically non-malicious or accidental, but these are still serious problems, but they aren't adversaries. They don't think and they don't adapt. Our focus is on the right-hand side of the chart. As we follow the red line down from an external source to a human one, and then to a malicious actor, now even here, there's a key difference. A malicious event can be accidental, like an employee clicking on a phishing link. That's an awareness problem where employees need to be trained on, but our core intelligence mission is built to find and counter the intentional human adversary. Why? Because those accidental or non-malicious threats, like an unpatched server, are already covered by other operations, such as like an IT department or our vulnerability management service. Our intelligence service is built to focus on the thinking threat. This is the human operator on the other side of the keyboard adapting their tactics. That is why a simple automated defense isn't enough. You have to analyze and predict what that person might do next. Next slide, please. So how do we analyze that intentional human adversary? Well, we first start by breaking it down. This model of what a threat actually looks like. A true actionable threat isn't just one thing. It's the intersection of three key components: intent, capability, and opportunity. You have to analyze all three. First, let's look at intent on the left. This is the what. This is the who and the why. Who is motivated to target an organization in the sector and why? And at the top, capability. This is the what and the how. What tools and skills does this specific threat group actually have? And lastly, on the right, opportunity. This is your side of the equation. Where is the organization actually vulnerable? What does the attack surface actually look like? Now, any one of these alone isn't the full story. A vulnerability, opportunity, that no one knows how to exploit capability is actually a low risk. The real high priority threats exist only in the middle, where all three of these circles overlap. Understanding this model is how we move beyond just simple alerts and see the complete threat picture. Next slide, please. So how do we implement all of this? How do we take Kent's philosophy and that threat model and turn them into a practical day-to-day operation? Well, we use this, the classic 5-phase intelligence cycle. This is the core operational process. It's not magic, it's the professional discipline our team uses to turn raw, noisy data into actionable intelligence. So following it from left to right, with the first phase being planning and direction, this is what we figure out what to look for. This links back to the focus on concerns idea we just talked about. With the next phase, collection, is the gathering step. That's where we pull in all of that raw data from all of our sources. And then once we have that raw data, we move on to phase 3, which is the processing and exploitation. As raw data is just noise, this step is solely filtering out and turning it into a usable format that our analysts can use. Once we have that, we move on to the next, which is analysis and production, which is the most important human step. Our analysts take that filtered data and figure out the so what. This is where it becomes actionable intelligence. And lastly, this is dissemination. This just means we have to get the actionable intelligence to the people who actually need it. Like our own SOC teams, incident responders, and our service managers that brings that insight to the decision makers that we began with. Now, this isn't a one-time process. It's a continuous cycle, and then the feedback from an incident feeds right back into the planning phase, and it begins again. And it's also not theoretical. This is the exact same process we use to turn a single suspicious alert into a real defense. The cycle is like an engine that runs our entire intelligence operation. And with that, I'll hand you over to Emma.
Great.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So now I'm going to shift focus a little bit and talk about how we actually do the things that help us to achieve our CTI mission. So firstly, if we look at our general intelligence requirements. So this slide outlines the definition, evaluation, and prioritization of intelligence requirements, including criteria for assessing essential information gaps. So we've got some details here into how we make that cycle we've just discussed effective, and shows how we don't just collect data. We have to process to define what information is needed and ensuring that we focus on the most critical business risks first. So taking a closer look at our process, it starts with the definition and identifying gaps. This is so important for us to be realistic in our approach and to be able to allocate resources accordingly and ultimately meet the objectives we have outlined to customers. We then define those requirements. This means we really need to think about questions like, can we collect this information? Can it become actionable intelligence in time for it to be useful? And importantly, is the requirement clear and within scope? Next, we evaluate the requirement. So out of the requirements defined, what intelligence are we trying to deliver? This stage really focuses on the what questioning used a lot in CTI. So what applicable known threat actors are there? What are their motives and capabilities? And what, importantly, is the potential impact? Once these are established, we then move on to prioritizing so that we can really structure the next phase of the cycle. This is done by giving real-world context to intelligence by assessing environmental factors, which could be anything from known active campaigns, target locations, and critical business assets. We move on to the next slide, please, of automated collection. So now we can move on to our next stage and start the collection process. This phase of the life cycle can be the longest, and we try to reduce this pain point and optimize our resources for a more analytical focus. So this slide demonstrates how this involves firstly preparing our automated collection tooling to define criteria, select trusted sources, identify key search trigger topics, and testing and reviewing. So we test and review this to ensure once collection is executed, we are confident the process used is based on customers' requirements. Once defined and reviewed, the automated collection begins, and this is searched for and implemented on an hourly basis. And if it meets the criteria defined, it is automatically ingested through our connectors setup between the collection tooling and our intelligence platform. This automation greatly reduces turnaround time and means our analysts can focus on much more valuable analytical tasks such as reviewing and refining the collected data. Up next, we should have advanced collection tooling, please. Thank you. So, as I just mentioned, collection is quite notorious for being the most time-consuming and painful part of threat intelligence. So the platform here and other toolings used within the Threat Management Center at Airbus Protect have integrated AI capabilities, which in this stage allows us to sift through millions of sources. This allows for our OSINT information to be much more manageable and can be customized based on different needs. We have a few examples there of threat actors and vulnerabilities, but we can also customize this to focus on certain locations, campaigns, and industries to really drill down into what is important to our customers. This platform alone monitors over 5,000 cyber-specific sources, so as you can imagine, can be quite overwhelming, but its customization really helps us to track unique topics relevant to customers, ensure efficient and high quality data collection, and gain real-time insights on a more tailored threat landscape. Next, we can take a look at our intelligence setup. So this slide illustrates the integration of open sources into our platform. So this starts with our predefined trusted sources within our collection management framework, and also includes integration such as NIFLA, a natural language processing tool used for extracting STIX data, and Sherlock, an enrichment tool which enhances the data collected by automatically integrating with services like domain tools and VirusTotal. These tools and sources are combined with our OSINT tooling to feed into our central OpenCTI platform and create one aligned intelligence source. And next step, please. So we've shown a bit of our integrated CTI system. So now this slide focuses on one of our custom tools, NIFLA, that helps to automate the most time-consuming part of intelligence work, which gives us a massive head start as analysts. So NIFLA is essentially a tool using a large language model algorithm to read unstructured threat reports to then automatically extract critical information. It then converts it into structured STIX data, which is finally ingested straight into our centralized tooling we've just discussed. It provides us with much more speed and increases the scale of data we can sift through, and ultimately frees up our time to be using skills on the analytical requirements. So as you can see, the example we have here, we have a PDF threat intel report processed through NIFLA, and this immediately identifies a threat actor, a malware type, campaign, and tooling, all ready for an analyst to review. Next step, please. So after we have ingested data, we then expand on it. And Sherlock is one of the tools that helps us to do this. Sherlock is our enrichment and pivoting assistant. It is essentially a set of connectors that query external web services like domain tools and VirusTotal to enrich existing observables and discover new related ones. Its architecture allows for future API integrations as well, for us to keep adding to our central platform. Sherlock is an automated tool that is able to pull from all of these external resources to then be able to link a clue within all of our collected data to a wider network of potential intelligence, building out the full picture of an instance so we can identify potential relationships. So here, one example is we've started off with an IP address, and then once gone through the processing through Sherlock is expanded to a full domain network, enabling us to map out a campaign, provide more potential indicators of compromise, and make more confident attribution and recommendations to help prevent future incidents or aid active responses. So next step, let's focus on what this ingestion and integration results in. So our aim with toolings is to combine open source intelligence and internal incidents to provide actionable intelligence which feeds into other internal services such as our Security Operations Center, incident response, and threat hunting teams that we've already mentioned. This process also includes collecting internal transnational incidents as well as OSINT information, enrich them with collected knowledge, pivot to generate new knowledge, and deliver this to our reactive security teams. This enables us as a whole to support quicker attribution, reduce attacker dwell time, create unique and customized detections, and identify a bigger holistic picture of an adversary attack chain. This is all part of our one team approach that we work towards on a daily basis to generate new and crucially shared knowledge, as it's not very useful if we are keeping it to ourselves. So the next slide, we have an example of one of the final outputs of that entire process. So this is an analyzed knowledge graph generated from our threat intel platform and demonstrates how we transform millions of data points into one single simple, actionable picture of a threat. So this example shows the Ransom Hub group. It's not just a list of alerts, it visually links all threat information and maps out the threat actor's infrastructure. We link the TTPs, tooling, and malware to provide connected, relevant campaign intelligence. This turns that complex data into clearer insights into incidents that are easy to understand. This type of output works extremely well as well, as highlighted in a number of research studies, as humans can actually process visuals up to 60,000 times faster than they do text. So these type of visuals enable all our teams to have the same understanding of a threat and easily identify the relationships that will be important to the specific aspect of their work. A SOC analyst might be on a case and may only want to check for IOCs at this point. Threat hunters might just want to focus on attack patterns, or vulnerability analysts can easily focus on CVEs. So in the previous slide, we showed how we map a threat. This slide is more the actionable result of that analysis. So this is the intelligence dashboard we can deliver, giving a complete profile of an adversary, their motives, targets, and toolings, helping us to ultimately better defend against them. This is a sample of the result of analysis in the output of a full dashboard on Ransom Hub. So we have mapped knowledge to the MITRE attack framework, covering critical initial access techniques like phishing, RDP, and exploits. We have a profile of their motivations, information on their targeted countries and industries, and technical insights such as tools and malware. This is information available to our incident response and security operations centers that can use this intelligence to enhance their own investigations and can hugely benefit incidents. By teams having a heightened understanding of their attackers and threats really enables us all to better proactively protect against them and make more guided and effective responses. So lastly, both of these outputs are also a great input into scenario building, an approach adapted by the Dutch NCSC. So this slide shows here how this intelligence can be used in another form of output for customers by providing real life-based scenarios for true risks and potential impacts to be understood. This involves us to really specifically select and scope cases and incidents that could have a true reflective impact on the customer's industry or other areas of interest. Once scoped, we then move on to a deep dive for the customer and provide trends and drivers, threat actor profiles, tactics, techniques, and procedures that could be used against them and really define what the actual impact and likelihood would be of such a scenario taking place. We then produce that scenario. So this is a narrative of selected cases that, once reviewed and validated, are shared with the customer so that we can all have a realistic view of future risk, identify unpredictable challenges, and ultimately be able to make strategic yet proactive decision making. And now I believe it's back over to Stefan to walk you through one of our real life examples.
Yes, thank you, Emma. All right, so this is a example of a case which shows the interoperability of our teams and how the threat intelligence can support to reduce the dwell time in our SOC services which we are providing. So for this example, we took an example on a llama stealer attack, which was very publicly reported about in the past months. And on a Friday at 11, because things always happen on a Friday, there was an alert arrived in our security orchestration tool. And this alert mentioned a run of a suspicious command in a run RMU registry. So that was basically a PowerShell command line somebody executed on this device, which tried to download a specific loader. This was automatically detected and isolated directly by our own source system with the playbook which we have implemented in the source system. 7 minutes later, so at the Friday at 11:11, one of our level 1 analysts started to pick up to have a look at this isolated case to see what's going on this one. 21 minutes after the initial alert on that Friday, so at 11:25, a second user was tricked into executing this WinRM execution methodology. Again, this was automatically isolated by the playbook, and it appeared to be a pattern which was automatically merged into one incident for the analyst. So the analyst had a look on both of these cases and escalated this to an L2 analyst because he was seeing something being suspicious around this device. So 25 minutes after the initial alert, this was raised to the L2 analysts, where the case was identified as a malicious action. The clients have been informed around the ticket, around this case through ticket, email, and phone. And there was a context enrichment through our intelligence, because at the time we already knew publicly reported that these kind of lures are linked to a Luma Stealer campaign, and we provided this information towards our SOC analysts. On the Friday, 11:55, 51 minutes after the initial alert, there have been further manual response actions launched after we have received some green lights from the clients to do them, which was we knew the root cause, so we identified what's happening, why it was happening, how that was initially executed on the devices. The malicious URLs we found through those alerts have been blocked so that nobody else can be lured into this phishing campaign. The malicious URLs which have been delivered have been moved. A password reset was forced in case something was stolen, and the sessions have been revoked so that also the sessions cannot be reused by a potential threat actor. After that, the client received a final report about what happened, the motivation behind that, how that happened, etc. And the IOCs found have been reported back again as a feedback to Team C and the Indigo team. So the Indigo team, what we heard in the beginning, is the threat hunting team, which supports and helps to create detections in the hunts at our whole client basis. So that means this detections, what we saw on one client, can be detected on a second client as well, which we see through our automated SOAR playbooks as well, that these kind of informations are supporting immediate remediation and reduce further damage of our client base based on the informations we gathered. That means 2 hours, 43 minutes after the initial alert, we knew the complete phases of this attack. We knew exactly what happened. We gave some recommendations around awareness trainings on that one to people that, for example, if you see a captcha which asks you to execute something on your device, you shouldn't do that. And yeah, with this example, we show you how these investigations can be accelerated when you know what's going on and when you understand the campaign behind that and the tactics techniques used by the adversary, and you're reducing as well the stress level of the people involved, because they know what the goal is, and they know that those stealers, for example, have as a goal to steal credentials and not the documents, for example, from your device. With that said, I will give back to Francesca.
Thank you, everybody. So we've just got some time for some questions now. Looking in the chat to answer the ones that have been popped in so far. Will this be available on YouTube, and will the link be in the webinar been sent by email? Yes, absolutely. Tomorrow, probably the presentation will be sent to you by email, and not so quickly with the YouTube because we need to get the file, but it will be emailed to you directly as soon as we have that. So hopefully you all got an email 24 hours ago from me from Airbus Protect to give you joining instructions for today, so a similar sort of setup. And then I think the next question was in relation to I think it was in relation to the Ransom Hub affiliate program. It said, how can we predict an attack with this tool, and how can it help us conduct a risk analysis? So
okay. Maybe I take this question here. So what we saw on the Ransom Hub outlining, so that is the baseline which you need to predict further scenarios or hypotheses and create your hypothesis around what can happen. So there is a methodology which we are using with our analysts when we are creating threat landscapes, etc., which are framing the risk for our clients, which is called the analysis of competing hypotheses. So what this means is, based on the information you have on the threat actor and based on the TTPs you have on the threat actor, you can in the end outline different hypotheses what happens, and you're looking at what those threat actors did in the past on terms of their kill chain, basically. So what they used in executing different stages for their attacks. And for that, you build different hypotheses, which you test against several questions you are phrasing. And based on that, you get specific scenarios. And those scenarios will then be evaluated about their about how they are working in your environment. So you will need also to know your attack surface. So you will need to know what critical devices you have exposed to your internet, for example. And that is incorporated into this hypothesis analysis. So that means you compare the threat actor tactics in the hypothesis you created, which might happen in the future, compared to your attack surface you have. So we saw in the threat before that you have 3 different pillars, the intent, the capability, and the opportunity, which builds the threat, and you push that against that, and this creates realistic scenarios that might happen for your organization. And based on that, you can then create or conduct pen tests. How vulnerable are you really against that? And that outlines then the risk your company faces, because these scenarios show you where your weaknesses are in a bigger picture for a threat actor specific scenario, with a high likelihood that this scenario might happen for your sector, for example. So it's also a little bit around showing around the victimology of the threat actors you're using to create those hypotheses in the end. But it's not a automated tooling process. It's something the analysts in the end need to conduct based upon those toolings and those informations we have in those tool sets.
Yeah, just if I can add on to that, I think it's a great question. It's also important to remember sort of CTI as a whole. Ultimately, it isn't a crystal ball, but rather, as Stefan said, a continuous analytical process that identifies and tracks attacker behavior to make educated forecasts onto their next moves. Sorry, just wanted to add on the end there.
If you're interested in kind of a resource around that, I really can highly recommend the Psychology of Intelligence Analysis from Richard J. Hoyer Jr. That was a CIA agent actually who founded some of those principles for risk analysis with threat intelligence in the past in 1999, which is a very interesting read around the theory of analysis of competing hypotheses.
Bit of bedtime reading for you there. Any other questions? Okie dokie then. Well, I've left up on the screen now. So if you have any other further questions, you can drop Hamza a message and he'll be sure to get that answer to you. But I just want to wrap up now and thank the experts for their time to address the challenges today. And a huge thank you to you all for your attendance as well as your time. We value your participation in the Mastering Intelligence-led Security Operations webinar with Airbus Protect today. We're following up, as mentioned, with a slide of the webinar, so you have them for your reference. And like I said, as you can see on the screen, here's our contact details. If you've got any other questions or anything specifically you want about your organization itself, our experts can talk you through it. Thank you very much for your time today, and we look forward to seeing you in the next webinar.